is Laurie Erdman at chronicwellnesscoaching.com, and I am here to talk to you today about boundaries, setting boundaries. This is something that I have struggled with for years. I mean, I couldn't say no to anything. And then sometimes I'd bail out if I could at the last minute, feeling totally awful because I never established my boundary in the first place. And boundaries and me did not get along. And boy, did I spend years in therapy trying to figure this out, and I never really did. But when I was diagnosed with MS several years ago, boy, I realized I had to figure this out. I had to figure out how to just establish my own boundaries and stop doing things that didn't make me feel good, that weren't in my best interest. And I want to share some of those tips with you today. So the first place we have to start is identify what the boundaries are. Where are your boundaries? And the first place to notice them is to feel them in your body. Let's say somebody asked you to do something. If your temperature starts to rise, your stomach gets tight, your throat gets tight, notice a physical change in your body. That is an indication that your boundary is being pushed. You don't have to do anything. Just continue along as you normally would in response to that request. But just notice where your boundary is. Then, when you start to identify your boundaries, the next step is to actually learn how to verbalize. And not verbalize them yet, but practice verbalizing your boundary. What is going to be your response to the situation when somebody asks you to do something that doesn't feel right? So what I want you to do, and this is what I did, is I want you to go to the bathroom, I want you to close the door, and I want you to practice in the mirror. I know it sounds silly, but it's the only way. It's the only way to overcome the fear of establishing your own boundary. And then, once you know how it's going to come out, once you know what you're going to say, then comes the next step, and that is to actually do it. Give voice to your boundaries. Okay? Voice to your boundaries. And start small. Don't pick some big boundary that you think is going to be really scary and have dire consequences if you set it. No. Start with something small. Maybe your girlfriend asks you to meet her for coffee at 3 o'clock, and it's not an important boundary, but you just say, you know what, can we meet at 3:30? Start to give voice to your wants and your desires. That ultimately is what boundaries are all about. So my challenge to you this week is to start to identify some boundaries that you have not been setting. Look into your body for that. Then practice them, and then find a small boundary, just a small one that feels safe, and start to establish that boundary. That's all for this week. Have a great time. Thank you so much for listening, and come visit me at chronicwellnesscoaching.com.